What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. I mean, you know these two guys already. You see them every week, but we love them so much. We're going to introduce them every week as we do. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. He is the senior editor of SureDog.com. My good friend, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Happy to be here as always.
Definitely. And of course, we got the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of SureDog.com, who also happens to be a good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, brother?
Boys, I want to ask you something. Is it possible to be really, really excited from a major event, but also be completely exhausted and want to have nothing to do with it? Like, can you simultaneously be like, I have to talk about 268, but also be like, I am so tired from this event, I don't want to look at it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the cool things about us doing this show, just us three, just us being friends and colleagues and whatnot, and collaborating on this every week, is that we get to that catharsis, just let it go, because this was an event of a lot of emotional highs and lows.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy. In fact, Jay, if you don't mind, for continuity's sake, let's pause the stat of the week for a second here and disrupt the format to talk about the event quality overall. There was someone on Twitter. I will be kicking myself if I don't get this man's name, because he is also a media member that we haven't had on the show. We need to reach out to him. Alex Behunin.
Behunin,
yes. For My MMA News, and I think he writes for Cage Side Press as well. He proposed something that I found very interesting. It was like ranking the Madison Square Garden UFC events. Where did 268 fall on the docket here? Because we got UFC 205, that was McGregor and Alvarez as the headliner. 217 GSP versus Michael Bisping. 230, Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis. 244 was the BMF fight, Masvidal and Diaz. And 268 was Usman and Covington in their rematch. So, gentlemen, off the top of your head, where do you rank those?
Take it away, Duffy.
It might be recency bias, but I think 268 tops them all. Just some really, really indelible moments, and the two title fights. I mean, they delivered. They weren't all-time bangers, but they were both really, really good fights. And then we had maybe the best 3-round fight I've seen in 10 years. On the main card.
I think where this event stands out to me, and this is something we talk about, and we've talked about in the show, and we talk about otherwise, about what makes an event great. And usually it's the amount of memorable fights with stakes attached to them. Like, Duffy mentioning that Gaethje Chandler, best fight in the last 10 years, regardless of length or title or whatever it is, may very well be right on the money, because you think of other absolute bangers like Cub Swanson Du Ho Choi, Marco Polo Reyes, and name escapes me. Just absolute all-out action battles. But this one had more behind it, had more significance in terms of Gaethje Chandler, of the stakes, the possible titles, the shot on the line. And that kind of thing bolsters the greatness of an event. Also, what makes an event better is if there are multiple contenders. You go, boy, obviously there's one fight of the night, but there are like 3 fights of the night. You could easily look at Burgos and Billy Q and go, wow, if were it not for Gaethje Chandler, that would have been fight of the night. And you look at Usman versus Covington too, and you go, that was a really entertaining back and forth everything fight. Dramatic finishes. You check all the boxes. And that's what you look for in a great event. And you think about other fight cards like that. 217 had a lot of moments. 217 was the GSP return when he tapped out or choked out Michael Bisping, TJ and Cody, and then Rose smoking Ioane Jacek. Very memorable. But it didn't have that this is the best fight I've ever seen type of a feel that you get when you look at these kind of things. So recency bias may be okay when you look at the other NYC cards that we've had, like the 230 with Cormier and Derek Lewis, Jacare and Weidman was just a great fight, but it didn't quite seem to have quite the stakes of this card. 205, obviously the first show, had the great Woodley Wonder Boy draw, and Joanna fought. Oh boy, Joanna fought somebody, but I can't remember who.
It
wasn't. It might have been.
It wasn't the most entertaining fight, that one.
It might have been KK. I think you're probably right. And I think Chris Weidman got flying kneed by Yoel Romero, if I remember correctly. So it isn't just recency bias, because the last fight, New York City, the first card happened 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And you think of just closing your eyes and picturing, I got to give it up to 268, guys.
Man, I really didn't know how to answer that question when I saw it on Twitter. So the only thing I proposed at 230 is last place. That's the only thing I know for sure. And no slight to Daniel Cormier or Derek Lewis. That was the heavyweight title fight to make at the time. Derek Lewis was certainly the most deserving contender, and maybe the fight could have been better if it weren't for the quick turnaround for Lewis, and also Cormier coming in there with like a broken hand, I believe it was. But I think the story of 230 is more in the fights that were lost. Remember, that was going to be Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier. If I'm not mistaken, I think the rematch between Rockhold and Weidman was scheduled for that briefly. Man, it seemed like there was one more, and there was also that weird point in time where like Sajar Eubanks was supposed to be in the main event. Like the story about UFC 230 is more about the drama outside of the actual action in the cage, and that disqualifies it for me. But it was a perfectly fine pay-per-view event. I believe that was where Israel Adesanya styled on Derek Brunson and cemented his place as like the guy at middleweight to look out for. So that, but still, that's last place, man. UFC 205 has the iconic moment of Conor McGregor holding up two belts. The like Khabib having a conversation with Dana as he's pummeling Michael Johnson, and that sort of setting up, perhaps the most intense rivalry in the history of the sport, unbeknownst to us that evening. Man, like 244 was silly as far as the belt that was put on the line, but man, for pure entertainment outside of the co-main event, it was like you couldn't ask for much more. Wonder Boy styling on Vicente Luque, Kevin Lee with the spectacular head kick, Corey Anderson upsetting Johnny Walker stands out to me as well as one of the things to look out for in that event. 268 was fantastic, but I have a hard time putting it above 217. The return of GSP,
yep.
the three title changes in a row.
That's a big one.
It's hard to top that. So I'm going 217, but I'm not mad at any order you give as long as 230 is last place. So sorry. All right, I guess my daughter doesn't like that. I don't know if y'all can hear her screaming. It's picking up in the mic. That's what's up.
Just faintly.
That was faintly. All right, good. All right, so Jay, I'm sorry to have interrupted your normal flow of things, but please share with us your stat of the week.
Not at all. I'm glad we had this little aside for greatness of events, because 217 was, that would have, that's right there is my other top. So it maybe, I mean, like I said at the beginning, have a crazy event that you want to talk about, and we were talking on Saturday night, going, oh my god, I want to talk about it, but it's already 2 a.m. on East Coast, so I can't sit down for an hour. So maybe in like a month, I'll look back and go, okay, the GSP capped off event was better, and I'm okay with that. But Kamaru Usman did something incredible at this fight card. Now he survived some adversity. He got hit a couple times. He got rocked here and there, but he won. He won a decision, even if the scorecards you may or may not agree with them. The 49-46, I believe, that people were a little curious about there. but he won his 15th fight in a row. 15 fights in a row. The only fighter that has done one more UFC fights in a row is Anderson Silva, who won his first 16 with his legacy of greatness, starting with poor Chris Lieben and ending with Stephan Bonner. 15 in a row. And Colby Covington's about the only guy that's tested him in this run. So he is just almost in that unique air. And 15 is the stat of the week.
That is a very, very, very impressive stat. And I think that's a good way to transition into what we should be talking about next. One of the things we should be talking about next. Kamaru Usman was proclaimed by Dana White from the podium post-fight as the greatest welterweight of all time, eclipsing George St. Pierre. Gentlemen, is Dana right? And if not, how far off is he?
He's Dana White. He's not Dana Wright in this circumstances. It's championships have to matter. Now, I know that we look at, title defenses is only one part of the story, but it has to be such a massive part of the story because GSP had 9 consecutive title defenses in his ridiculous reign, avenging losses and doing, he had a 5-year I didn't lose a round in the cage streak. You just can't say that when you look at Usman getting tested by Colby Covington. Now, Colby Covington is a great fighter, deserved to be there, I guess. I mean, he sat out, and Dana obviously loves when fighters sit out for title shots, except for if they're Carlos Esparza. Now, he challenged Usman in a way that very few have, and he kept him honest. But that doesn't mean you're a bad. You're worse if there's a rival that can challenge you. Some of the best rivalries in this sport's history. Anderson Silva in his 16-fight win streak included the Chael Sonnen first fight, which, as we know, losing. Oh my God, triangle choke. But if I tap out, I just lose the round. Shut up, Chael Sonnen. Just that legacy that he put together. But GSP did it, all of it at the top of the top. And Usman has only done part of it as the number one fighter in the division. And while, yes, I do agree he is the number one pound for pound fighter currently in the world, he is not the best welterweight of all time. But give me 2 years and a couple more wins, and we're going to have a talk.
So, apologize, Lai is highly upset right now about the GSP disrespect. Ben, what's your take on this matter?
I agree that he has at least a couple more wins to catch up to George St. Pierre. I don't even know if he's that far ahead of Alexander Volkanovski as the best male pound for pound fighter in the sport right now. Like, you look at their relative resumes, and you can argue that Volkanovski has more pound for pound quality wins or more wins over like greats in his division than Usman does. But I don't want to rain on Usman's parade. Like, what a great moment, what a great weekend for him. He talked about his rivalry with Covington feeling a little bit like Ali Frazier and how he'd be open to a third fight, even though, he's won the first 2. I like that. And honestly, a third fight here, maybe not immediately, but another year or 2 down the road might continue to contribute to his legacy because Covington's just going to go right out and beat 2 top contenders in a row and make him look bad because Covington's that good. But no, not right now. He's not past GSP.
All right. So, as far as GSP and Usman is concerned, I think one thing. Okay, she keeps smacking the mic. Really? It's just a microphone here. You want to play with the pop stopper? Here, there's the pop stopper. There you go. Play with that. There you go. Yep, she got the pop stopper. There we
Perfect.
go. Now let's try this again. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, this might not be the most popular opinion, but I'm not mad at the. I still say GSP is the best, is the best ever, but I'm not mad at this that the discussion is happening right now. One thing that we have to remember is how long it took Kamaru Usman to get his title shot, and how many people he had to go through in order to get it. This is a man who essentially within his first 2 defenses kind of had already cleaned out the top 10. With the exception of like new entries like Michael Chiesa. and I know he never fought Wonder Boy. He's essentially cleaned out a lot of the division. Now there are new contenders emerging, as time will always do. So we can renew these conversations about how much of the division is left to go through. But there was definitely a point in time in the very, very recent past where we can look at the top 10 and say, yeah, I think Usman has done all he needs to do with this division. And that forced the retreads of of Colby Covington. And granted, the Masvidal was less warranted in that rematch, but there also weren't other clear-cut guys except for Leon Edwards out there. So I'm okay with these comparisons, but I still say he's just like 2 defenses shy, in my opinion.
I think where I struggle with the line of Usman being or reaching GSP's achievements is that, after GSP avenged his losses, he got armbarred by Matt Hughes, and he tapped a strikes against Matt Serra, and then went on to head kick Matt Hughes, and then went on to smash Matt Serra in the body, and then went on to go back and armbar Matt Hughes. Obviously, the timeline's a little different, but every one of his opponents on his title reign was a new legitimate test that he could fight. It wasn't a rehashed, I've beaten this guy, I'm going to beat this guy again in 2-3 years. And I think that's what makes it difficult for me. Like, I would argue that the contenders that GSP fought on his lineup were all more worthy than Kamaru Usman cycling through the 1 and 4 again and again and again. GSP might not have fought the rightful number 1 contender according to the rankings that were, UFC didn't have rankings back then. So this was like Sherdog rankings that we would have up. But he fought like Jake Shields coming over from Strikeforce on a 15-fight win streak. He fought Carlos Condit, who worked his way up the ladder on like a 6-fight win streak. I mean, the Diaz thing obviously was, partly with Diaz, but Koscheck earned the rematch against him. Dan Hardy did enough to get there. Thiago Alves, BJ Penn was the lightweight champion trying to do the 2-division thing. And Johnny Hendricks, again, everybody that he fought on his way through the division was a next good person to test. Okay, what'll he do against a slick kickboxer that might be able to kick him in the head in Carlos Condit? Well, he gets kicked in the head and still managed to get out there. What's he going to do against Jake Shields, an incredible grappler? He's going to be surprised by K1 Jake Shields, but he'll still get through it. Johnny Hendricks obviously had some drama about it. But Usman fighting the same couple people is the Cain Velasquez type of championship run that I go, it's a great run, but you're beating Junior Dos Santos, Bigfoot Silva, Junior Dos Santos, Bigfoot Silva, Junior Dos Santos. No, seriously, that's how it happened. The Stipe Miocic fighting Francis Ngannou and fighting Daniel Cormier. I think part of it is the diversity of the opponents that the champion fights and overcomes their different styles instead of racking up rematches against people he's already beaten. And I think that is where GSP will stand above for a while, because if you look at the top 10 of welterweight, still has to rematch Leon Edwards, because that was a fight a long time ago. And since then, Leon Edwards has won. He hasn't lost since that fight. He's on like a 9 or 10 fight unbeaten streak since that span. We're talking about contenders. We're not talking about where they stand and if they've lost recently. Never fought Wonderboy Thompson. Never fought Michael Chiesa. Never fought Neil Magny. Never fought Bilal Muhammad. Number 10 is Khamzat Chimaev. Never fought Jeff Neal. Just in terms of contenders that are ranked and are possibly worthy of contention, he, to me, hasn't cleaned out the division. He's cleaned out the top 5. And I think, even though I would argue that Colby Covington would smash most of the 6 through 10 guys, I think that they're going to be able to need to earn their shot, so we don't have Joe Benavidez ruining everything. We don't have Alexander Gustafsson drop kicking all the contenders out of the division. I think fresh challenges matters, and I don't know if I'm on a limb. Duffy, am I crazy? Is that something that should matter, or what do you think?
I mean, that doesn't matter to me as much as just the length of the reign and the number of defenses, and that he fought something at least close to the most deserving contender every time out. Whether it ends up being run back fights with a couple of top contenders or a fresh face every time doesn't matter to me as much. I would much rather GSP have fought the most deserving contender at the time, whether Dan Hardy happened to be a new face that they just wanted to get a new face in there, or it was someone he had already beaten a year or two before.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I mean, obviously though, Usman is in rarefied air. I don't really think that we can debate whether or not this conversation should be taking place. But the end result can be different depending on how you look at it. But Kamaru Usman is certainly one of the greatest welterweights of all time. He's definitely top 3, and he's not 3. So
okay, that's exactly what I was about to ask you. Has he passed Matt Hughes?
Oh yeah, he passed Matt Hughes already. I think honestly, I think Tyron Woodley passed Matt Hughes. So
okay.
Yeah, Matt Hughes is not in the discussion in the top 3 as far as I'm concerned. All right, fellas. So of course, in the co-main event, Rose Namajunas defended her belt by split decision against Zhang Weili. Really entertaining back and forth fight, hotly debated, obviously with the split decision there. Do you think that she has done enough to cement herself as the best women's strawweight the UFC has ever seen?
Yes. It's a young enough division that all of its former champs are still there in their prime. They're all there fighting each other, and Namajunas is now 2-0 against the other 2 women that are really in the top 3 discussion. Like, what more is there to say? Like 2-0 each. Like, she's a collective 4-0 against Gaethje and Zhang. So yeah, it's close. It's competitive, and some of the individual fights have been competitive, but she's got to be it right now. And if she ends up fighting Carla Esparza next and beats her, she's got this on lock. Like, I don't think there's anything any of the other 3 can even do to unseat her at that point.
And that is so crazy because of how young the division is, how clear cut of a number 1 she has become. Because when you have one win over somebody, you can, like, for instance, when Max Holloway was fighting Jose Aldo and he beat him the first time before the rematch, people were like, well, does a win over Jose Aldo make Max over Jose Aldo? But then Max beats him a second time, and you go, well, now we have to really talk about it. Like Conor McGregor beat Max back in 2000 and something. I was at the event in Boston, and he won the decision. Also knocked out Jose Aldo. His head-to-head wins, to me, do not make him an all-time featherweight above Max and Aldo, even though he beat both of them. But when you start doubling up and handling them basically the way you did, I regret that I was unable to officially score Weili Zhang versus Rose Namajunas too, because a windstorm decided to go, hey, internet, we're not doing this right now, so you're off the table. So she's done everything she can, Rose Namajunas, to be the number 1 strawweight, but she's 11-4. She's had 15 fights. That is so wild to me that the 29-year-old best fighter in the division's history is right here, and she earned it. It's just, I always am wowed by how little pro experience she has relative to how great she is and whom she has defeated again and again. And I'm so blown away, considering I've seen literally every one of her fights live. Like, I watched her fight Emily Kagan back in Invicta 4. I think Invicta 4 was the one where they put up a pay-per-view and then it failed and they had to refund everybody. I think that was number 4. I might have get that mixed up. But anyway, seeing her hit the flying armbar, oh my God. 11-4, and she's the best strawweight that has ever strawweighted. That's wild, guys.
It feels so weird to have this discussion, and like when Ben and Jay, when you guys spell it out logically, I'm like, all right, I see why we're having this discussion, and she probably is the best strawweight of all time in the UFC. But the division, it feels like it's still brand new. It still feels like it has a shiny coat of paint on it. And then even when I think of dominance in that division, I think Joanna Jacek. She was the boogie woman of women's mixed martial arts for a nice period of time there. And then I think, like, well, Rose did floor her in the first round and then schooled her over the course of 5 rounds in a rematch. So I guess she is. And then the only loss out there, at least in the UFC, that she has to to defend, or to avenge, I should say, is Carla Esparza, and that's the fight that should have been taking place Saturday. Like, I don't. She's the best ever in this division, and I'm sure that'll change over time. But it's her.
Who's the best?
Who's the best? Pat Barry's the best. I have an important question. The division will be 7 years old in the UFC. I believe that is when it officially launched. So
Pat Barry's ready to date it.
In December 2014.
He's got to fight Pavel for that.
Hey, man. In the Tough 20 finale, I believe, is when strawweight was officially introduced, because that's when the champion was crowned, when Carla fought Rose. Should we even be having this discussion yet? Because the division's less than 7. Like, it's a good discussion to have, and I like what we had, but I'm saying, are we so premature that it would be like at UFC, I don't know, the UFC 50, go, okay, who's the best that's ever done it here? Be like, well, hang on, we just started here.
But we were having those.
Yeah, we had those discussions.
Yeah, I know, and that's what it's so like, weird to feel.
Has Hughes passed Miletich? You know, answers at 11. Like, yeah, that's what we do.
Or 4.
We never talk about something.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we're back. Had to take a brief hiatus. So thanks to insane family stuff going on. These kids are crazy. So as I said in our group chat, having kids is like juggling live grenades. So that is my experience. But anyway, let's keep talking about these fights. So Marlon Vera, with easily the biggest win of his career, with a beautiful front kick knockout on the former lightweight champion Frankie Edgar. I mean, because we can give some love to Marlon Vera, of course, and his ascension in the division, but the real story here, in my opinion, is Frankie Edgar, who very recently, I believe it was during fight week, actually, during media day, he said that he wasn't considering retirement. He will retire on his deathbed. Well, Marlon tried to tuck him in as best as possible. Are we officially in Frankie Edgar's go out on a win phase of his career, or do you really believe his deathbed comments?
I kind of do, and I hoped that wouldn't be the case. He's a guy that's always had other irons in the fire. He's a guy that I figured, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, that he'd be a guy who would be able to leave the sport on his own terms and not need to be pushed out or not go out on a string of alarming losses. But the kind of noises he's making now, they do worry me. And honestly, it just makes me, it makes me sad. Like, I'm not going to be the one to sit here and say that if he can get 3 or 4 more paychecks out of the UFC, considering what he is paid, and he is he's well paid by UFC standards. I can't tell him not to take that. He's the one who has to feed his family, not me. And I assure you that I care about these imaginary things like legacy more than he does. He's just trying to live his life. It's just a bummer, because it's even just 2 or 3 years ago, we could still say about Frankie, he's only losing to the best of the best of the best. And it's not like he's getting his brains beat in.
Right.
Now he's losing to guys just on that next step down. Some guys that, they're top 10 or they're going to be top 10 after they beat him. And he is getting brained. And that's a big difference. So yeah, it looks to me like he's probably going to need to be shown the door.
It was distressing to me. There were a few things. First of all, I think this has been covered on a lot of different places, but it needs to be addressed, is that Frankie Edgar was the smaller man in the cage by a fair margin, not just in terms of height and reach, but just body mass. He was a smaller guy. This is the former lightweight champion that was the smaller guy that I think it was on your recap show, Ben. You and Shillen were talking about joking about a move to flyweight. Dude, I don't want him to do it, especially at this age. But in terms of how he looks in the cage,
do you think he weighs more in the cage than Deiveson Figueiredo?
No way. Not at all. I don't think so. I think the difference is Figueiredo is a lot younger, so the weight cut isn't a murderous death toll on him, whereas Frank Edgar is 40.
32.
Yeah, and we've seen him struggle.
Yeah.
Which just makes me think I don't want Frankie Edgar to be the Skeletor face going to flyweight to do what? Fight, I don't know, Cody Garbrandt? God, I hate that idea. I hate everything about that, just saying that out loud.
Bro, Ali loves that.
Because the problem that Frankie Edgar is facing now is that I think he has lost 5 of his last 7, 4 of them by knockout. Not just TKO, accumulation, defensive. We're talking Brian Ortega smashed him. We're talking Korean Zombie dropped him, I think, twice before he finished the job. Corey Sandhagen knocked what I think he said something. What did you say that the Corey Sandhagen knocked 4th grade out of his skull or something? Tuffy?
Yeah.
And Marlon Vera in the front kick in a fight that Edgar had been hurt badly multiple times. And this was the kind of the fearful, oh no, we're reaching that point in his career where that chin isn't going to work. And the problem with him keep losing and him having the name he has, he will never have an easy fight again. Never, never, ever, ever. There isn't going to be a time where he's going to fight a Hunter Azure or a Tony Gravely level of like a barely top 50 bantamweight. It's just the way Frankie Edgar is. He's going to be fighting, I don't know, Sean O'Malley. They might throw him to him, and Sean O'Malley's a tough kid. I'm not on the train like you guys are, but that doesn't sound good. Rob Font loses a fight, that's a bounce back kind of thing. You see the names that they could throw at him and go, I don't like any of those. I don't want him to fight Brian Kelleher. I don't want him to fight, Cody Stamen. The next tier that you're mentioning of the down belows. I think this is the Frankie needs to go out and win stage of his career, and I'm really afraid that sometimes guys will go on way too long because they just want to get that one win, but just that one feeling back, the BJ Penn, I just want to get that one. And Frankie can hang. He can hang really well, but he's so big name of a fighter that you can't put him against a guy he's going to fold. He just run through. So I'm worried about him. And are you of the mind that Frankie can get another win, or is he have the deck so stacked against him that he's in trouble here?
I mean, he can get another win, but like you said, the matchmaking is not going to be in his favor. He has too big of a name to just throw in against, your random, guy coming in off the Contender Series that they're not hyped on. If he faces someone like that, it's going to be a killer. It's going to be someone who they're very high on and they want to build his name. I really, the best I think we can hope for Frankie Edgar is a retirement fight with like Dominic Cruz. That seems to be the best way to maximize name value and preserve brain matter. I'm not very fond of the idea even of Frankie going to 125. And the funny thing about it too, I met him at least one time. I think it was at the Dominance MMA media day or something.
The big lunch.
And the media lunch. And it was he was among flyweights and bantamweights. This was actually before he went to bantamweight, before he had his first bout. He had just announced that he was gonna compete at bantamweight and hadn't actually started his cut according to our conversation. He hadn't done his test cut yet or anything. He was not as big as Henry Cejudo. He was about the same size as Cody Garbrandt from what I can remember. Like, Frankie Edgar is not big even on the bantamweight scale even. And I think having such a long period of his career fighting heavier guys, especially you look at the Maynard fights, how big Maynard was coming into those, to have your brain battered by a guy who outweighs you by that much on a consistent basis, it's catching up to him now. And it's unfortunate, but yeah.
I have a name, and he's busy right now. He has a fight scheduled. I think in December or November. It's either end of this month. Anyway, I have a name that I want to see if you guys like as a possible retirement type fighter to face off. A former title challenger in WEC. He a respectable name, longtime veteran, and no concern for the knockout power. Haniaya. A winnable fight, a respected name, and a guy that's not going to hit him more than 4 times in the fight, just with his fists.
I'm not mad at that. But is that a big enough name for Frankie Edgar?
15.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
top 15.
not even necessarily the ranking. Just the name, like
Mhm.
Frankie Edgar against Hani Yahya, just feels anticlimactic for
Yeah, I agree.
him. You know, even you think of what BJ Penn's last UFC fight, was that the Clay Guida fight or was it the Ryan Hall fight?
Ooh, I think it was Ryan Hall, but I could be wrong
But
here.
either one of those names actually doesn't have the anticlimactic feel to it. Ryan Hall, like sort of a cult like figure. It's got this really devoted following and it's just known to be a killer. And then Clay Guida, who had his own following and was a top contender at one point in time and has always been a fan favorite. Those felt like, okay, these are appropriate in name value and competition level.
All right, I'll give you one more then, and it's a name that has talked about wanting to fight some more. He hasn't done yet. It'd be a rematch with Uriah Faber at 135 because their first fight was at 145.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that either.
I feel about that like I do the Cruz one.
Okay, yeah, I like the Cruz one too. I don't have any issue with that either.
Comparable name value.
Yes,
comparable. I mean, yeah, roughly comparable place competitively. And again, Faber is someone who's not going to beat his brains in.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think of. I don't want to see him fight. Yeah,
I mean,
think of a name.
I'm still fine with the Hani Yahya fight. I like Hani Yahya. If you got a guy that got that many fights and has never even accidentally knocked anybody out,
not even by injury,
like that dude's got bubble wrap for hands. Like make that man fight Frankie Edgar.
Well, I mean, while we're on the subject of brains being battered in, let's talk about that Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler fight. Swing or miss, Ben, this was the best fight of 2021 so far.
Yes, this was the best fight of 2021 in terms of the action, in terms of the drama and the narrative, and in terms of the stakes. Because again, a sizzling fight that doesn't have immediate title implications just doesn't feel as big. This fight felt big. We knew it was big going in because the booth had said, this is a possible title eliminator. And even as a fight that everybody kind of red pencil circled this as, oh, that's going to be a fight of the year candidate. And it didn't jinx us. It actually delivered. What a fight. Unbelievable. Best fight of 2021. I kind of said off the top, it might be my favorite 3-round fight I've seen in a decade. Just an incredible fight. You have to go all the way back to ironically, like Chandler Alvarez but no, those were both 5-round fights. Yeah, those are both fivers. Yeah.
Swanson and Korean Superboy.
Yeah, Swanson and Choi.
Yep.
Might be the best 3-rounder I can think of before this.
And it really does. And I think I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about just the scale of the event, is that it is just so relevant in the picture. And we know that rankings don't matter, and the UFC makes most of that up and decides who they want to fight for the title anyway. But this was kind of the de facto title eliminator, depending on how good things went, because Islam Makhachev's best win is Dan Hooker, and Michael Chandler knocked Dan Hooker all the way out. So you have that MMA math. Gaethje beats Chandler who crushed Hooker easier than Makhachev. It's not that big of a thing. And then I think of a couple other fights that happened this year that were just crazy dramatic, but they just didn't quite feel the same. Hiro Prochazka and Dominic Reyes just threw down for 2.5 rounds or so, and then Reyes started slowing down and then got just the crazy spinning back elbow that you think of and go, oh my God. And then what other ones do we have? Fizia, Bobby Green, great fight, but nowhere near the significance of this fight. I mean, apparently, according to the internet, I made the UFC broadcast by talking about how Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler are it's my main event of the UFC 268, and I stand by that because this was the fight. This was the fight. This was. I know what's going to happen. It's going to be silly nonsense. There may be like 5 knockdowns or 6 or 8 just about knockdowns. And even with all the anticipation and excitement and expectations I had, it still surpassed it. So it is my 2021 fight of the year. And I just can't see what would you have to do to pass it?
Yeah. I mean, a miracle has to happen for this not to take fight of the year. You know, I was trying to not fall victim to recency bias, so I wanted to give it a couple of days to think about it, and the closest I could probably think of would be a Volkanovski Ortega.
That's a great one.
But even that fight, it had its dramatic moments, but for the most part, it was Volkanovski just waxing all over Ortega. We didn't have that. I mean, I think Gaethje was the clear winner, but there were plenty of moments where it looked like he was about to lose.
Yeah.
There were plenty of moments in both rounds. I mean, all three rounds where both gentlemen looked like they were about to lose.
Well, these are some of the least airtight great fighters of all time. Like, have there ever been two fighters this great that made you scared this often if you were rooting for them or had money on them?
Yeah.
I mean, we've been watching both of these guys for so long.
Oh, well,
like, think of when Gaethje fought like Luis Palomino, and they were just beating the life out of each other. And there were moments that Luis Palomino, a current bare knuckle prodigy, well, not prodigy, but a success story in BKFC, is doing damage. And you go, oh my God, Gaethje might lose here. And Michael Chandler, the Eddies, the two Eddie fights, top tier.
Brent Premise fight, like Brent Premise beat Michael Chandler and
kicked his leg off.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to phrase this because it was just in my head and it just left. But these two, like, this was sort of a collision that we wanted to see for a very long time and was talked about when they both were champions in their separate organizations.
Exactly 5 years ago was Chandler versus Henderson right before he lost to Premise, and it was the last World Series of Fighting defense for Gaethje. Gaethje could have gone anywhere. He could have gone to Bellator, probably would have fought Chandler immediately. We could have had this fight 5 years ago, but somehow it wasn't past its expiration date.
And we know Ray Seffo and Scott Coker had talks about a co-promoted event at one point, and that was making a lot of headlines that they were trying to put some event together, and Gaethje versus Chandler was sure to be on that card. They both talked about it in the media endlessly during their separate title runs. And the funny thing is, both fighters have matured a lot since then. They've had their ups and downs. They've changed their strategies. Their approaches are a lot different than they were at that time. But the funny thing is, if that fight happened 5 years ago, the exact same thing would have happened that happened Saturday. So despite their maturation, despite them aging and going through whatever tribulations and successes and whatnot that they've had and changing as fighters and men, the same thing would have happened. Like, they reverted back to caveman status and beat the crap out of each other. And wow, it was a pleasure to watch.
That is the best point about this fight right there. You just made, Ant. This fight would have looked the same 5 years ago, except for it might have been 5 rounds, depending on the organization. Like, this is the kind of fight you could have put them together 10 years ago, 5 years ago. In 3 years, it's going to look like that.
Well, here's one, man. I'll throw another swing or miss at you. Do you think either man will be capable of fighting like this again? Swinging or missing on that one?
Swing. It's in their nature. It's the kind of self-destructive tendency. It's the, I don't want to say face first, hard-nosed brawling style like a Boston fighter, but not far off the finish line. This is the kind of thing that it's going to be their style until the wheels all the way fall off.
Well, see, I'm not asking about their styles changing. Do you think the wheels are falling off after this?
No.
Because what I saw was a fight that alters the course of one's life twice. That's what I saw.
I like what you're saying, but I have seen like 6 of those fights for each of those men so far. So maybe it's like in what is it, Varsity Blues, with the concussion counter on the top of the scoreboard about Jimbo's concussions left. This is, I don't think so. Chandler's still 35. Gaethje's 32. This is it's going to get ugly. It's going to be like when Chuck starts fighting guys that knock him out way easier than they're supposed to. But I am all here for all the action and violence until that happens.
I do think it'll happen for Chandler faster. Just, he is 35 and he he's a guy. I'm not saying he has no technique. He's an elite wrestler, and his striking, while it's pretty bread and butter, like it, he's a good striker, but he really has gotten by on athleticism. Just he's a fast twitch, freakish athlete. He's the kind of guy that if it were 2008 and he were black and Mike Goldberg were on the mic, he would have just called him athletic and explosive, but he would actually have been right in that case. He's an athletic, explosive guy that does have a shorter expiration date. So I think he's probably on the back nine regardless of the damage, just as his physical gifts start to wane. I don't know if he'll be able to make his game work against top fighters anymore. But no, neither of these guys is built for the long haul. No, I'm surprised that Chandler is still as good as he is.
Yeah. That's I mean, to start off in the UFC at 1-2, it's been a fun 1-2 for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's proven exactly his worth and what he's capable of at his best. So
it is the hardest 3-fight run for anybody ever in the UFC, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, so I think Jay is just frozen with anticipation of the next time these two will be in the cage. But so we'll just push things on to shallow cuts for the time being. And Ben, since it's just me and you for the moment, I'll go ahead and ask you a quick question here, sir. Patricky is now the Bellator lightweight champion after knocking out Peter Queally. How do you feel the Bellator Ireland event went as a whole? You have 30 seconds, my man.
I'm not going to need 30 seconds because I haven't watched it except for highlights. Just when you have this much stuff in a weekend of fights, something's got to give. And I elected to watch Fight Circus 3. So they got in some good Irish fighters. Kieran Clark, I saw got a finish. Yeah, I mean, it was another Ireland card.
Yeah. I didn't get to watch it in its entirety as well. Just a couple select fights here and there. All right, Ben, so you have the outline in front of you?
I do.
All right, go ahead and throw a question at me, sir.
All right. Matchmake the losing title challengers from UFC 268. What should be next for Colby Covington and Weili Zhang?
All right, Colby Covington, this is a simple one. He needs to be fighting the loser of Masvidal and Edwards. I expect that to be Masvidal. So Masvidal and Covington should be the next one. For Weili, let's just run back the Joanna rematch. Let's just run that back. Yeah, I guess so. Or maybe, the Joanna rematch. Why not? It seems like a sound thing. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Michelle Waterson either.
Yeah, I mean, she's finally kind of broken through and gotten together enough wins that you could justify moving her into that picture.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll throw one more at you. Will the UFC fast track Alex Pereira to a title shot at middleweight if he wins another 1 or 2?
Absolutely. Ahead of his debut, I said 3. He needs to win 3 fights, and they will put him in with Adesanya. I'm surprised they didn't already start beating the drum of he's got unfinished business. There's a score to settle. But they're going to curate these fights carefully. They're going to put him in against other strikers. I expect it'll take 3 total wins before he gets a title shot.
All right, cool. We got a few seconds to spare there. I was actually surprised they didn't really mention the previous meeting with Adesanya a whole lot. Like, I expected that to be the talking point the entire time, but it kept it to a minimum. Not bad. Not mad at that at all. All right, so one more question, if you wouldn't mind throwing it my way, sir.
All right. What was the best part of Chris Huggy Bear Barnett's performance this weekend? Was it his walkout, his knockout, or his talkout where he snatched the mic after the fight?
It's got to be the knockout. I mean, the walkout was fantastic. The post-fight interview was fantastic as well. But that knockout, a spin kick knockout, and to hit someone that high on the head when you have that much of a height disparity was absolutely nuts. I'm sure there are so many people who did not see this man on the regional scene and had no idea what to expect, and see this portly guy come out there and he's been kicking people to death. I love it. That's the best thing about it. Can't wait to see him fight again.
And man, the little front somersault into like the Kung Fu Panda just butt drop was perfect. So perfect. I was bummed by the post fight interview just because he totally just stole the thunder from John Volante's any retirement speech he was going to give.
Yeah.
Just killed him with kindness.
But it was so classy. It was so classy to make the whole crowd erupt for him. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's funny, man. During the fight, before the knockout, like, it was not a very entertaining fight. They were at a distance from one another. They were just kind of, oh, Jay's back.
Hey, boy.
Happy to see you again. They were just kind of pawing at each other. It just didn't seem that entertaining. And I was actually texting Oscar that, like, man, this isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. And then boom, spin kick to death. So, well, all right. So now I think it's time for us to move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the last week. I'll begin with our returning panelist, Jay. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon moment this week?
So I am quite excited to bring this gift to you all because it's a very important one for me. It is not UFC. It's not Bellator. It's not One Championship or Pro Fighters League. It's not even Fight Circus. It's our clown shoes organization of BKFC that we love to love and hate and everything. Now, there are two stories, and I don't know which way to go, so I'm going to very quickly summarize one of them. The first of all, you remember when they had, the guy die right after the fight? So it turns out the next BKFC event was not, in fact, sanctioned. Montana said, we're not doing this. So they held it and did it anyway. So it is officially an unsanctioned event. But the bigger story is there was a BKFC card in New York in a casino, southwest New York. So it's way down south of Buffalo in a little town called Salamanca. So it's in New York, but, not really. And reservation territory. So, of course, they can get away with it. There was a fight that was supposed to happen, and it didn't. It got canceled on fight day. David Morgan, Zach Johnson. It was just another fight on the card. One of them, I can't tell which of them, had a really, really bad record, like 0-6 boxer, all knockout losses, just one of those atrocious matchups. So, before the fight, on fight day, David Morgan decided, I'm going to go enter an eating competition, and I'm going to eat all the food on fight day. This is fight day. And he goes to the pizza and the wings and all the things, and he's eating all the food. And he didn't win the competition, but he gorged himself to a level that he was not allowed to compete. Whether because of a weight discrepancy or because of his health or because of, I don't know exactly the official cause of it. But this fight, he said, and I quote, "Good morning, everyone. I'm going to keep it simple. Yes, I was removed from the card as an example for bad eating habits." So, BKFC fight fell through because a fighter decided to enter an eating competition on fight day. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Wow, when I saw that headline, I was hysterically laughing, and then I thought, like, well, maybe it was a financial decision because I'm sure the eating contest paid better.
And he was paid his purse despite not competing. Dave Feldman paid him his purse. I can't make it up.
I think Dana just shivered at the thought of that. That is absolutely fantastic. Ben, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, during UFC 268, since it was obviously a huge event and it was at Madison Square Garden, plenty of people in attendance, including a lot of prominent UFC fighters, and they panned to them during a break. They showed, Francis Ngannou and Valentina Shevchenko sitting together, and I think Derek Brunson photo bombing him from behind, with his blonde hair, looked looking all like Demolition Man-y. They got to Michael Bisping. It's like, hey, there's the former champ Michael Bisping enjoying MMA on his day off, without a word for Kayla Harrison, who was sitting right next to him and looking at the camera. Like, we've talked over the last couple of weeks about, the games the UFC will play. When the UFC wants you, it's like an 8th grader wanting you. Like, do I pretend I hate them? Do I pass them a note? Do I give them some mixed signals? But yeah, they were not going to give her even the slightest bit of visibility. And it was such an obvious snub because the camera paused. So clearly there was either a written note in front of Anik, or there was somebody in his ear from the truck saying, do not mention Kayla. Like, and that was only the second saddest thing that happened during that whole thing, because Eddie Alvarez was up against the barriers. I used to be a contender. Like, how long ago was it? It wasn't that long ago. I mean, they could at least have called him, one championship, 195-pound standout, Eddie Alvarez, and not alluded to.
Or former UFC champion Eddie Alvarez.
No way.
That was so funny when Eddie Alvarez, because he stood up in anticipation of the camera panning to him.
It was bad.
And they just, nope, we're gonna cut angles. Like, nope, we'd rather introduce Halle Berry for the 30th time. That was, granted, I'd much rather look at Halle Berry than Eddie Alvarez, but you get the idea.
Seeing Eddie's face of the excitement turning to disappointment when he realized they were not going to put him on camera, that was something. That was you could bottle that.
Yeah, I mean, It was snowing. It was so cold in that arena. Man, UFC ruthless. They're ruthless. But speaking of ruthlessness, I guess this is the exact opposite, because my I'm not surprised comes from the bonuses. Namely Bobby Green, who had a stunning knockout over Ally Quinta, and in my opinion, the best performance he's ever had in the UFC. He actually won a performance bonus, so you get an extra $50K. However, he made some comments that normally will exclude you from getting that bonus. He said that, hey, the bonuses need to up because it's been $50K for so long, and inflation needs to be accounted for, and that $50K don't spend the same. Dana actually laughed that off when asked at the press conference, but they actually gave Bobby Green $50K after that,
and so went out of their way to do so. They handed out a total of 6 bonuses, so they could easily have snubbed him just by not bending their own usual guidelines.
Yep. And this is one of those events where you really have to question the bonus structure, because I mean, if you're not gonna reward like all the people who put on this ridiculous show and all the spectacular knockouts that we saw, and you have to pick and choose, and somebody's got to be left out. It just doesn't make sense. Just pay the fighters what they're worth. No performance bonuses. Just pay everybody flat fees. Stop the show win structure.
I mean, they had a gate, so they now had an additional, what was it, 12 million? All I know is it was the number 4 biggest MSG event ever. So they could have easily.
Yeah, the money is there. The money is there, despite what will be said from the podium at some other point in time. All right, fellas. So let's go ahead and keep things pushing as we start to wind things down. But there's no way that that my man Jay can sit here on this panel and we not talk about Fight Circus. So they did put on an event that certainly had Twitter abuzz as it was going on. Jay, did that card deliver for you?
See, here's the thing. We know what we're getting into with Fight Circus, and we love it just the same. Like, we know most of the bout order, and we have the poster, so there aren't many surprises on the broadcast, and that gives us something to be excited about. Like, when we know there's something that is essentially dizzy boxing, which is the first fight in the card where the fighters come out with baseball bats, and some people who don't know be like, are they going to hit each other with those bats? And then they spin them around like they're going to play dizzy baseball or something, and then they have boxing gloves on, are going to wail on each other. That's the opener. That's how you start a show. That's like in like a Japanese event, like an old Pride show. They'll put a banger right off the bat to get everybody's attention and make them show up and go, oh my God, that's ridiculous. And BKFC needs to pay attention to that model and get that kind of eyeball there and not let their fighters eat all the food and screw things up. And other organizations do too. I mentioned BKFC because there is a slight partnership with Full Metal Dojo and BKFC that they're trying to put something more together. Full Metal Dojo's Fight Circus 3 was exactly what it needed to be when it happened. It happened after the Bellator Ireland card, which I don't want to talk about that card because that card was not good in a lot of ways. And it kept being interesting enough, even with the technical difficulties it encountered, even with the broadcast crashing out like my internet does, even with any sort of issue going on, it still managed to be just that. I'm going to watch like this. I'm going to just peek through to see what's going to happen because of the Indian leg wrestling with Instagram models, or let's put on the kicking only events, which are the kicking only fights are spectacular, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They are always great. And they need to realize they could make a whole card of those and we would watch them and really enjoy it. But then they put on this thing that we were curious about, and I wanted to see how it played out. And unfortunately, they did air a video, so it had happened in the past, which I understand why they wanted to work the kinks out of it before. And it was the phone booth fighting, where they had, it turned out to be two women. It was going to be two smaller guys, but it turned out to be two women, and they were in an old European-style red phone booth, and it was modified Muay Thai rules. Headbutts allowed, so it's kind of left way, but not quite. And they beat the crap out of each other. And it was they signed up for it, so I don't feel exploitative or bad or anything like that. But it was sensational. It was everything it needed to be. It was a proof of concept. I don't know if Duffy liked it as much as I did, but I was just sitting there, just going, I can't believe this is happening. And it happened, and we let it happen. There were more fights that happened, obviously. I don't know if Duffy wants to take over and talk about any more of the things he enjoyed, because I know he witnessed this card live too. It felt good, man. It felt, Fight Circus is the kind of freak show. It's self-described freak show. They know what they're doing. We know what they're doing, and we're with you. It's like the handshake kind of thing that, yes, we appreciate everything that you do because you take away from the seriousness of what we have to cover. It felt like the world was coming back just for a little while. Just that little bit of remedy. It's weird to say. I felt better after Fight Circus ended than UFC 268, which was full of people in Madison Square Garden. I don't know how that's the case, but I just felt like the world is healing.
I'll say this. Obviously, Full Metal Dojo is... it's like an ice cream cake. You know, it's not meant for every meal. And if it's all I had, it would, a little goes a long way. You know, I don't even need Full Metal Dojo Fight Circus events every month. Every couple months where I see the poster, I'm like, oh man, I want to see that, and have a little anticipation. There's something of that reminds me of my early fandom in mixed martial arts, where, you know, you'd have a pay-per-view and they'd tell you the likely lineup for the next pay-per-view that was 3 or 4 months away, and you'd have all this time to get ready for it. They do a really good job at mixing just the complete, just comical monkey shines and things that have at least some grounding in martial arts. Like the kick only fighting is fantastic. The phone booth Muay Thai was fantastic. But then the Siamese boxing, where they had two people, you know, like a sack around one of their legs each. And I quickly realized once the fight started that they had not decided whether ground and pound was going to be allowed or not, because it takes a long time for two dudes who are tied together at the hip to get back up. Like that thing should have been over in about 20 seconds. Because as soon as one pair went down, the other guys could have just beat the living shit out of them, and they never would have been able to get back up. I mean, I think they saved the best for last. Strictly speaking, it wasn't mixed martial arts, but they finished with two cam girls, because of course they're in partnership with Cam Soda. 2 girls, 2 butt plugs, about 5 feet of string, and they had a tug of war. They just each put a butt plug up their butt and crawled in opposite directions, and they went until the plug popped out of one or the other. I mean, it was probably more evenly matched in sporting than the average Bellator prelim. And just, a good look. Like, I could see a hybrid of that and some actual martial arts, maybe sometime. But yeah, it was pretty much the greatest thing I saw all week. Butt plug of war.
The plug of war, man. But Will, you gotta mention that they did the 2-on-1 fight that I know Ant loves very much.
It was so good.
And it was just great.
Seeing Will Chope guillotining a 5-foot-tall man while his 5'1" partner tried desperately to break the grip was so good.
It was see the way that it had been match made before. It was kind of a mismatch. That it was the 2 guys. They were only named Bank and No Money. Like, I don't know their names, and I should be the one that would know their names. And they've been fighting people that they like a 1-on-1 guy, a Russian guy or Ukrainian guy. And they choked him out and they knocked him out or something. They beat him twice. Remember, this is the first Fight Circus. They beat him and then said, "You want to do it again? You want an encore?" And then they fought again. And then the second time they fought Ali Muhammad, the king of kebab, and they kind of beat him up. But then they fought a former UFC fighter, a longtime fight veteran, and he fought strategically. He thought, if I can put one out, I'm going to get him. And son of a gun, the strategy in a 2-on-1 fight, it was everything we needed.
Slaughter.
At the inner Krav Maga in me smiles at the thought of that.
I gotta throw one more thing out about this, because this isn't some harebrained happy accident. This is exactly what it's designed to be. If you're watching this and your mixed martial arts fandom runs back at least to the tough era, if not before, if you're a guy or gal who was on the forums or is on the forums before there was even an MMA Twitter, this whole thing is a love letter to you. I mean, just the commentary included, they took swipes at one championship. They took swipes at old UFC promos. They mentioned Artem Lobov in a way that only forum people would get. Like, unironically talking about him as like an all-time great. I was half expecting them to say, "I met BJ Penn at the airport." Just like some of that old school, like, forum lulls. It is exactly what it wants to be. It's a love letter to us, and I am 100% here for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exploitative, and that's really the thing that that stands out. This isn't Evander Holyfield thinking that he's that he has a chance against a much younger, stronger, and actually like mentally competent man. Although Peter Belfort, it's kind of a stretch describing as that, but you get my drift. Like, yes. The guy has a painting of like Ben Carson as Jesus or something in his house, so he can't be that well put together. Anyway, I digress.
He ain't risen, has he?
I digress. It makes sense because it is exactly what it says it is. It is not like exploitation under the guise of real sport. It's just fun, weird time. That's it. And it's a good way for us to remember that we aren't, curing cancer here. So it's very easy if you get caught up on the weekly cycle of fights to be very, very serious about it. And I do take my work, as you guys take your work, very seriously. But it is nice to step back and be like, hey, this kind of just fun. Let's just have fun with it. So definitely can thank Fight Circus for reminding us of that from time to time. All right, so we do have some action this weekend to discuss. Chris Cyborg is headlining Bellator 271, defending her title against Sinead Kavanagh. Now, is there any hope for our Friday evening of Bellator action here?
Oh, there's some hope. Like, if it depends on what you want out of Bellator. Like, I just mentioned, like, that sometimes some of their fights are not the most evenly matched or sporting things ever. If you just want action and blood and guts, you're going to get some from this card. There's some slaughter built into this card, and it's from the top down. I mean, Sinead Kavanagh is a 5 or 6 time Republic of Ireland boxing champ. Her record looks pedestrian, but if you're a 145-pound woman, a lot of times your record just looks pedestrian because there's nobody to fight. So you've been in the fight game for years, and you've got like 10 fights, and you're 6-4, or you're 7-3, or something. That's just how it is. My problem is Sinead Kavanagh ahead of this is saying, like, I'm a better boxer than Chris Cyborg. I see holes in her striking. And here's the thing. You might be technically right, but that doesn't matter. If that's the attitude you're going into this fight with, you are going to die. Because you know what? Chris Cyborg has fought a lot of people who are technically better strikers than her. And she has knocked third grade out of most of their skulls. Like, this is not going to be a strategic thing. I think this is going to be an absolute war. It's just going to be kind of one-sided. And there's a lot of that going up and down this card.
I wish I had more positive news and ways to spin this card, but this is a card that there are a lot. Let me do a quick check. There were probably, I don't know, the entire main card, I would guess, has betting favorites at like 3-1 or higher. Like this is a fight card that I think the last time I checked, I think there's a 16-1 favorite or something like that. So this is Valerie Lareda is fighting a woman that's well below 500. This is not what we signed up for. But at the same time, it is our buddy Kaposa Grabaka Hitman on Twitter. His Bellator prelim sacrifice hour with the heart and the sun. That's exactly what we're going to get here. So if you want that, baby, you got it.
We at least get to see Aaron Pico fight an undefeated guy in Justin Gonzalez. I expect Pico to, put in the work we see Aaron Pico do, but at least it's a guy with an outstanding record, and it's, it shows actually that they are having faith in him again, and now he seems to be being built up as to the potential that we all saw in him originally. So I am looking forward to that, but the rest of this, throw it in rice, man.
And speaking of throwing it in rice, am I mistaken, or is this UFC card this weekend? First of all, there are two things. First of all, there shouldn't be a UFC card this weekend.
No, it should not.
This is the week you take off. You don't, because if you do, then the story continues. The Usman story, the greatest of all time, the all of everything. But now we have to talk about Max Holloway, and like it's Monday, and we're having to discuss Max Holloway now because the train ain't a stopping. And the other thing is, this is a one fight card, period. Well, without even it's more of a one fight card than Bellator's.
You mean Rothwell versus Marcos Pizarro?
That's the only fight that I care about.
I mean, Cynthia Calvillo and Andrea Lee might be fun.
Yeah, like
Miguel Baeza and Chaos Williams, that has some action promise.
I don't want to slight the fighters, but this is the filler stage of the events. Max versus Yair is a fight we wanted for so long, and the UFC is billing that, and then 12 more that are on the pile up on the way, like the accidental scheduling Kyle Dawkins and Roman Dolidze, because everybody they were going to fight fell out. So like, well, we'll just stick them together. And Leah Letson coming back after 6 years off or something like that. It's just,
dude,
give me more.
Spencer versus Letson might be the fight on this card that will get the winner closest to a title shot in their respective division.
Unless Yair beats Max.
Like I said.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Did you guys notice when they put the graphic up of the fight card during the pay-per-view?
There's a TBA.
Well, no, they said there was a TBA. I don't remember seeing.
Yeah, OSP is out.
Okay, all right. So they were they were previewing all the fights and like Max Holloway's taking on Yair Rodriguez, Ben Rothwell, and they're going down the names except for Spencer and Letson. They just totally skipped that. Totally skipped it. Didn't mention it at all.
Oh man.
They mentioned every other main card bout except that. So yeah. So that's what they think of the featherweight division. Featherweight division.
Maybe there's just a weight limit. That's why they didn't mention Kayla Harrison either. Here's what they think about you. Here's what they think about you.
All right. So before we wrap things up, an action heavy promise here between Holloway and Rodriguez. How do we see this one playing out? Who you got?
I don't think that Yair Rodriguez will be able to handle the pressure that gets put on him over 5 rounds. Now, Korean Zombie did pressure him and did win the rounds. And of course, the knockout that we all remember, which was back in 2018, by the way, 3 years ago is when that crazy thing happened. I know it doesn't feel like that. But Max versus Calvin Kattar is the kind of thing you'd be like, oh, is that fight of the year? And you'll wait, no. There was no competition because Max Holloway threw 400 significant, or landed 400 significant strikes. Max gets in his rhythm. Yair Rodriguez won't be able to do his flying, flipping, spinning, jumping, kind of stuff like that. I think Max will probably finish the job, probably in like the 3rd round or so, just an accumulation of just like 200 strikes. You know, like the third, it's the kind of fight that he'll land like 50 in the 1st round, 60 to 65 in the 2nd round, and like 90 something. It's like that ramping up where you just go, oh my God. And Yair Rodriguez, now granted, his only loss was the doctor stoppage when Frankie beat the brakes off him on the ground. But if Frankie can beat you up with ground and pound, Max Holloway in the feet, I just feel like that's harder just mathematically or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Ben, who you got?
I'm with Jay here. I like Rodriguez a lot. I think he is one of the most enjoyable fighters to watch fight in any division. I think it's a shame that various circumstances have kind of conspired to keep him not as busy as he could have been over the last 3 years or so. But Holloway, it's not just that Holloway's a dreadful style matchup for him. It's just Holloway's a better fighter. Holloway's a dreadful style matchup for almost everybody, just because he's really, really good. And I'm with Jay here. I think Holloway's going to style on him. It'll be competitive for a round, but Holloway, he's always been a builder. He's always been a guy who starts rolling downhill on you. He's going to do that on Rodriguez, and we're going to end up with another Kattar thing where he's just like nailing him with no look punches, looking to his son for like coaching advice during rounds, talking to Dana. Just it's going to be a Max Holloway showcase.
So since I know you're going to pick Max, Ant, I'm pretty sure you're going to pick.
Yeah,
Max.
absolutely, yes.
Here's my other question to you: does this win? He'll be at 2 in a row. Will this win, if you presume it's like a stoppage, like we're thinking, or at least a one-sided performance? Will this win be the one to get him the trilogy?
No, I don't think so. 2 losses to the champion. You got to do more than what he's done. Although he will put on a statistically brilliant performance as he did against Calvin Kattar. Like, I think this is going to be the striking equivalent to what Khabib did to Edson Barboza, where you have a kick heavy offense. You have a guy who needs that space to move, and he's going to get jammed. He's going to get pressured. But instead of being double legged and thrown to the mat, Holloway is going to jab and body shot and slip cross. It's going to be a pure exhibition of hand technique, and it's going to be rough for Yair. When this fight was first announced, my first reaction, I think I just knee-jerk just jumped on Twitter. I was like, somebody must not like Yair at the UFC. They still got a thing against this guy, because this is not the day for him. And of course, someone like Rodriguez, he has that opportunity for that one kill shot, like he landed against Korean Zombie and saved himself from a clear decision loss. Like he can have that kill shot, but you're talking about a guy in Max Holloway who has toughness out of this world, and just seems to have granite inside of his chin, and seems to actually get encouraged when you hit him a few times. He's going to keep him on the back foot, and it's just going to be one-way traffic. Holloway's probably going to break some more of his own striking records in this fight, and that's if Yair lasts enough, if he lasts long enough. Yeah, man. So with that being said, I think that's a fair place to conclude this edition of Unleash. Big thanks to Jay and Ben for jumping on here in the Walkout Network with me every week. I love talking to you guys, and thank you for your patience in dealing with my kids wreaking havoc in the house, and now they're asleep and we get to finally talk. So go ahead and check them out on Sherdog.com. They're going to have all sorts of UFC Fight Night and Bellator 271 updates. going throughout the week. So make sure you stay locked on that. You can find my work on MMA On Point. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.